Hey Startup Nation, I am so glad you came back to join us for another edition of the Startup Life. You clearly are ready to get the tools you need to get ahead of the competition. Go ahead and give us a 5-star rating while you're here. Now, if you're looking for an ad-free experience, go ahead and sign up for our Patreon page, where you will get exclusive content and access to our digital products that we're beginning to launch. The link is there in the show notes. And if you want to ask questions directly to some of our guests, follow the Startup Life Podcast Club on Clubhouse, as some of our conversations will start to happen there. But back to the task at hand. Are you ready to level up? Of course you are. Get ready as the Startup Life Podcast begins now.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation. So I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is the Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, an untold number of societal shifts will arise from the COVID-19 crisis. But one thing is for certain, healthcare has changed more in the last year than perhaps during any similar period in modern history. Every business leader has had to contend with this new reality and consider what role they have in providing a safe working environment, access to healthcare, and more. In Startup Nation, we have a fantastic guest that kind of navigate those waters and more. He is a primary care physician, technologist, and executive who serves as the chief medical officer for Accolade. He is also the author of Care After COVID: What the Pandemic Revealed is Broken in Healthcare and How to Reinvent It. He is Dr. Shantanu Nundy. Dr. Nundy, how are you, good sir?
I am doing well, Dominic. Great to be on the show.
Thank you so much for coming on, man. And Startup Nation, I've already talked to Dr. Nundy right now. If my energy level isn't where it used to be, I did get the second dose of the vaccine the day before this recording. So I do apologize ahead of time now, Startup Nation. So Dr. Nundy, man, I just want to kind of get right into it. So I'm curious about, what has the COVID-19 crisis kind of exposed in healthcare? I mean, we were already kind of, dealing with some issues with healthcare, but it seems like COVID-19 exposed even more. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, and I think you said the operative word. I think for a lot of people that haven't had a lot of exposure to the healthcare system, they call me up and ask me, like, what happened to the healthcare system? And
Right.
I'm saying, nah, it's been like this. COVID's really been what I call a magnifying glass, right?
Right.
What it's shown us is, remember back a year ago, none of us could get testing. That's the same issue a lot of patients have faced for decades, which is it's really hard to get in to see the doctor.
Right.
You talk about the mental health crisis in this country.
Absolutely.
We've had a mental health crisis in this country, right? You look at the people saying, well, look what's happening in Black and brown communities. They're not getting, they're suffering from more COVID, getting more complications for COVID.
Right.
Well, that's the same thing when it comes to diabetes and hypertension and a lot of other stuff.
Absolutely.
And so you said the operative word, it's exposed, it's magnified, so that the common person, everywhere in this country understands much more viscerally now just how deep the challenges are with our healthcare system.
For sure. Well, it kind of reminds us of a conversation we had with Rashad Tabakawala a while back, and he talked about one of the two biggest, and this was like at the beginning of the pandemic, this was like the two biggest industries that's just ready for innovation was healthcare and education. And during the COVID, crisis or whatever, that has been, like you said, has been amplified and magnified even more. So I appreciate you sharing that, Dr. Nundy, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So I wanted to ask you this because, we talk to a lot of small business owners, on this show and stuff like that. I guess I'm just curious, what are some things to consider when deciding the health benefits for employees? That can be a deciding factor when an employee or prospective employee chooses a job or whatever the case may be. What are some of those things that small business owners or just employers in general can do when it comes to those health benefits?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let me just say, I get a chance in my job at Accolade to talk to small businesses, large
Absolutely.
businesses, Fortune 500 companies every day.
Right.
And the first thing I want to say is for all your listeners out there who represent one of those constituencies is thank you. Businesses to me have been really one of the bright spots in our country's response to COVID, right? I think the leadership that they showed in, figuring out how to move the workforce remote. A lot of businesses had to figure out how to do their own contact tracing,
right?
For their customers and employees. I mean, the way that they've expended benefits, whether it's giving people PTO to get the vaccine or figuring out emergency daycare services. I mean, it's been incredible to see the amount of innovation that businesses have faced. So that's the first thing I want to say is thank you.
Sure.
Because I don't think we would be in the spot that we are in today if it wasn't for businesses and the leadership they showed.
I hear that.
I think the other one is what I'm hearing is this has become, more of a C-level issue than it's ever been before, right? I think what we realized during the pandemic is health's not a benefit issue only; it's a business continuity issue, right? When your people aren't feeling right, that hurts your business.
Absolutely,
and that's not just true during a pandemic; that's just true overall, right? If a lot of your employees are dealing with mental health issues or family health issues or whatever issue, your business ain't operating the way it's supposed to. And I think that's actually been another silver lining is the C-suite really developing that awareness and really building some muscles that they haven't had before. So to get to your actual question about benefits, I think really recognizing that that's a critical decision that I think for better or worse, we got to lean into it a little bit, really understand the different options out there. And I think some of the specific things that I think about are, is benefits, is what are the benefits that you're going to get that are going to actually make it simpler and easier for your employees to know what to do, right? I hear all the time employers say, well, we got this benefit, we got that benefit. And I say, yeah, but if you ask most employers, I don't know if Dominic, I ask you, do you know what benefits you have available to you? No, you probably don't. People don't know what benefits they need till the second they need them.
Right.
And so figuring out a way for not just getting the benefits, but making sure that it's actually reaching the people it needs to reach is something that I think all businesses need to think really hard about.
For sure. I mean, honestly, man, like sometimes like looking at those benefit sheets, it's like looking at the tax code. It's like, it looks like, like something's like, from
100%.
It's like, well, man, 100%. I don't know what any of this, man. I don't know what is this. So no, I definitely understand that. And, and sticking with that same vein, as far as like the C-suite and stuff like that, you are an advocate of, companies having a chief medical officer at every company. Kind of talk about that. And what would that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, look, I think we got to be realistic. Not every company can, afford to have a physician full-time in their four walls. But I really think that having a way to get some of that fractional expertise is going to be really important. And I think it really, again, comes right out of COVID, right? Like if you look at every business had to take a different approach, right? Some businesses are essential businesses. They had to stay open. Some businesses have a lot of folks that can be remote. Some of them have a lot of people in their 50s. A lot of them have people in their 20s, right? So the first part of any health strategy has to start with, well, who's your population?
Right.
And what is your population's health needs? Right.
Right.
And that's just like meat and potatoes. You need to understand that first. And that's where having, the right physician expertise can be really helpful, because I see all the time employers who, for example, they invest in sort of diabetes, and I'm looking at their data and saying, you don't even have any diabetes, but what you do have is you have a lot of 20-something-year-olds who are dealing with anxiety and some other shit. So it's like starting with the diagnosis. You got to understand what is the problems that you're facing are, and you got to understand who your population is.
For sure. No, I definitely understand that. And that seems like, in healthcare, obviously I defer to you. It seems like in healthcare, we've been moving into that era of like really, I guess, customizing care per person, as opposed to like this, like, herd, like everybody gets this and everybody gets that, but really going into what I like to call that battleship kind of mode and being very specific to the person. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I think the word I like to use is personalization. Fair
enough.
And again, even during the pandemic, I think this became revealed to a lot of people. I mean, how many of us heard of something that came out of the CDC or something and said, well, that doesn't apply to me. Right. Or people say, well, okay, I heard that, but hey, I have an older person living with me. Or I heard that, but I got COVID 3 weeks ago. Does that still apply to me? Right. Or, hey, but I just got tested 3 days ago and that came back negative. So do I have to get tested again? All of those things have revealed to us that the need to personalize, right? Whatever guidance is out there to the individual, knowing their medical background, but also I think a big part of what we realize is what we're calling the social determinants of health, right? It's easy for me as a doctor to diagnose someone with COVID and say, okay, well, go home and quarantine.
Right.
But if that person lives in a household with 10 other people and they got 2 rooms and that person doesn't have a room of their own and they still have to work, and who's going to get the girl? I mean,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
what I had to, frankly, even as someone that's practicing for a while, and I like to think is pretty attuned to what my patients, I've been learning more about my patients over the past year than I've ever known, because I've gotten into the nitty gritty. I've gotten into the, okay, well, what room are you in your house? And can you close the door? And, and who's going to get your groceries? But really the reality is we should have been doing that for a long time. Because if you tell someone, hey, eat less sugar, but then you realize that person's not the person cooking the food at home, you know what I'm saying? That may not get anywhere, you know what I'm saying? And so really understanding people's medical needs, but also their sort of psychosocial and their social determinants, is again one of the key learnings we had from the pandemic.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. And also, due to the pandemic, it seems like, telemedicine has been on the rise. It was kind of on the rise before the pandemic, but definitely we kind of saw even more its value during the pandemic. I guess what does that look like, after we come out of this pandemic? Like, you talk about, expanding that coverage and benefits, because Dr. Nundy, when I think about telemedicine, like I live here in Tennessee, right? And there's a lot of rural parts in Tennessee. It's like, true enough, there's, healthcare issues and stuff like that here in the cities, but in the rural parts, right? Like there's not, there may be a hospital 20 miles from there, right? And so that telemedicine, from just thinking about it, seems like that could be very vital to fill in those holes. Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. Completely. And it gets deeper than that.
Of course.
I mean, I've had people who live in a city say, hey, look, I got health insurance and there's lots of doctors around me. I don't like any of them.
Gotcha.
None of them look like me. None of them are like me. Right. Or I have, take my mom as an example. My mom decided during the pandemic that she wanted to reverse her diabetes, which means like get off of insulin.
Gotcha.
And there's only a couple types of healthcare providers in the country that know how to do that. Well, guess what? With virtual care, she can now do that. She signed herself up for a service out of San Francisco. We live here in DC, where she was able to find a doctor who has expertise in doing reversal. Right. Similarly, I know people that are LGBTQ that said, you know what? I've actually found a doctor now who's LGBTQ, themselves. And so I think there's a lot of benefits to a lot of different people from virtual care. And I think you're absolutely right. We've seen it massively accelerated during the pandemic. And it's going to only, I think, continue, not at the same levels that it will, but we're not going back to the way we were before. That's for sure.
Gotcha. Well, I want to expand on that real quick, but let me do a quick reset. Once again, make sure we're talking to Dr. Shantanu Nundy, the author of Care After COVID, What the Pandemic Revealed is Broken in Healthcare and How to Reinvent It. And Startup Nation, if you want to purchase that book is available now. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. So Dr. Nundy, in that same vein, I guess I'm just curious, like, what does that look like? Let's just say I give you a magic wand, the pandemic is over. Like, what are some of those steps we need to take so that way, if there is another pandemic or there is another health scare, or something like that, in order to be prepared for, you know what I mean? So that way we're not necessarily caught off guard, as a small business owner, as a healthcare industry as a whole. I guess I just want to hear your commentary on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me start first with the small business perspective.
Sure,
I think, first of all, a lot of businesses, even before the pandemic, had telemedicine.
Right.
Some of them didn't. But I think part of what was holding it back was, frankly, your employees and your dependents, they didn't think that was as good as going to see the doctor. They didn't necessarily trust it. And that's really changed. Right.
Right.
But I think that the whole industry's got to mature. Right. I think sometimes we think a doctor is a doctor is a doctor. And that's not true at all. Right. Like, a lot of the people out there selling telemedicine services are private companies that are just doing telemedicine. Right. And a lot of those companies are staffed by, they're not even physicians. They're like, they're great people. I'm not, dinging anybody here, but they're, nurse practitioners, or they're people that aren't fully licensed in the specialty that you're accessing, or they're fly by night. They're coming onto the system, an hour or two a month, sort of doing a few calls and getting off. Right. That's sort of one layer. The next layer is some of these are audio only. Some of them are video based. Video's a lot better than audio, right? You can build that human relationship. You can see that someone's having a hard time breathing, as an example, right? Some of these services can order tests for you, and some of them can't, unbelievably. So the ones that don't, what they tend to do is they say, well, hey, let's just put some antibiotics on it. Let's go ahead and send a referral in, because they don't have the ability to order tests. They don't have a medical record, meaning that every single time you call, it's like Groundhog Day.
Right.
They're asking you the same questions over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
So right. And so
Right.
I think what benefit buyers have to do is, look, this has become a huge industry now, right? You look at the stock prices of all the major telehealth companies, how many of them have gone public?
Absolutely.
What we need to do is we need to start sort of being a little more discerning and looking at all the options we have and say, okay, I don't want to just get maybe the lowest price or the service that I used to have, or that's bundled in with a bunch of other stuff. I need to actually look at this and say, hey, what this one does is primary care, and that's what I want for my people. Or, hey, what this one does is it does mental health, right? Or what this one does is, for example, do specialty care.
Right.
I think getting to that next level of granularity is going to be really important, because again, you want to match the solution to the problems that your employees are facing.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Nundy, you also talk about in the book, Care After COVID, about investing in customer service in the healthcare space. You also kind of talked about what you guys do there at Accolade and stuff like that. Kind of talk about that. Walk me through that. What does that look like? Because let's be honest, it's not the most fun experience. Kind of, when you go to the doctor and stuff like that all the time, but kind of talk about what does that look like as far as customer service in the healthcare space?
Yeah, no, look, it's a disaster, right? Even if I think about the simplest things, and I love my clinic and I love my patients and I try to be the best doctor I can, but if you just think about the most common scenario is, patient of mine, say, wants a refill of their medication, right? They call our front desk, they're on hold for however long, they finally get to somebody, then that person says, okay, I'll let the doctor know. Then they hang up. Then that person has to send a note to me. Then I have to see it. Then I get a call back. Then I call it's insane. Right. And so, yeah, customer service in healthcare is almost like an oxymoron. And it's critical. I think the mistake we've made in healthcare is to think, well, look, if I make the right medical decision, that's all that matters. That ain't true at all. Right. Because it's care that's not convenient for a lot of people means that they don't even bother, right? If it takes a whole day or a half a day of missed work to come see me, what happens is people don't even make the appointment, right? If it's so hard to get a refill, people just stop taking their medicines. And we saw this. So one of the things I saw, so I take care of folks at basically like a free clinic outside of DC. So a lot of my folks, uninsured or underinsured, and a lot of them are, day laborers. If they don't show up to work, they don't get paid. And so I've had for the last, since I've been practicing, I typically have a 15 to 20% no-show, meaning that appointment scheduled, patient doesn't show up. And I never feel bad because I understand that they're looking at the budget that day and saying, should I show up or not? My no-show rate, Dawson, went to 0%. It was insane. Like, it was almost like I could barely make it through clinic because I was like, wow, this is what it's like when everybody shows up. And it was only because we went virtual. So suddenly that person could step out of the line, call their doctor from wherever they were working, do the visit with me for 5-10 minutes and get back to work. And so that just, to me, it really hit home the point that the experience of care, you could be the smartest doctor in the world, but if the experience that we're, delivering for people isn't, what they need, it doesn't matter.
All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. Hey, Startup Nation. Imagine a job where you can work wherever you want, on whatever you want, from wherever you want. Hello to white sand beaches of Thailand or the comfort of your own couch. Oh, and most importantly, you're your own boss. Now, what if I told you that the dream job could become your reality? This is the life of a freelancer, and with some hard work and with the help of Hectic, it can be your life too. Hectic is an all-in-one business management software built specifically for freelancers who are just getting started or looking to take their freelance business to the next level. Hectic is everything a freelancer needs to get started. From an easy-to-use contracts and proposals builder to client management and project tracking to expenses and invoicing that features click-to-play technology that makes it quick and easy for freelancers to get paid. And we all want to get paid, Startup Nation. Built specifically for freelancers, Hectic is everything you need to get started. Visit gethecticapp.com/the startup life now to learn more and start for free. Yep. Adding your first client on the platform will always be free. And if you sign up through gethecticapp.com/the startup life, you'll be supporting me and this podcast, because who couldn't use a little support these days, Startup Nation? Visit gethecticapp.com/the startup life to find everything you need to start or grow your freelancing business today, and put those in-demand skills to good use in the way you've always dreamed of. The link is there in the show notes. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. For sure. No, I definitely understand that. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm one of those people from time to time. It's like, man, I got stuff to do. I don't have time to spend half the day to try to get a prescription refilled. So I definitely understand that for sure. I want to ask you something really quickly about the book again before we kind of transition, because you talk about rebuilding the trust, in medicine and stuff like that. And look, man, I'm in the South, okay? And so let's just say people in the South had strong opinions about, the COVID-19 vaccine, COVID as a whole, stuff like that. How do we get that trust back, from both sides, right? From the medical community and just the community as a whole. What does that look like to you, Dr. Nundy, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, it's such an important, it makes me, again, another silver lining, the fact that we're talking so much about trust in medicine, right? I feel like 2 years ago, all we talked about was AI in medicine, right? So
fair enough, right.
I think in some respects it's highlighting, COVID has highlighted what really matters from what doesn't. And I think trust is one of those. It's the currency of medicine.
Right.
It's the currency of medicine. And so, look, I think for all of these things, my perspective is it's the system stupid, right? Or another favorite quote I have is every system is perfectly designed to achieve the results it gets, right? The lack of trust we have isn't a bug, it's a feature, right? Mm-hmm. It's that when you want to build trust, like a service like Accolade, you got to think through the entire end-to-end experience,
right?
So it comes from the types of people, for example, I'll just talk about Accolade as an example, the types of people we hire people that represent the communities that we serve.
Right.
And when we hire them, we explicitly, one of the major criteria is hiring them for empathy. And then we actually train them on how to, provide care to people through the phone and address their concerns over the phone. And then beyond that, we actually give them feedback on how they do. We listen to their calls and we pull them aside and say, hey, that wasn't the kind of care that, we think is one that creates that kind of trust. Sure. And then we measure it. Right. I remember when I got to Accolade, it was funny. I started and I was in these meetings, people kept saying ASA, CSAT, ASA. And I was like, ASA. I was like, because in medicine, that's aspirin.
Gotcha.
And people were like, no, that's average speed of answer. And I was like, oh, right. And then they said CSAT, that's customer satisfaction.
Right.
We measure that. And we don't do that in healthcare, but at Accolade, because we care so much about the experience, we not just measure that, but it drives the business. It drives business decisions when our average speech to answer is too long or when our customer satisfaction starts to dip.
For sure. No, I appreciate that because look, I'm not gonna lie to you. When this thing, kind of, COVID-19 kind of came around and stuff like that, and it was talking about a vaccine, I was like, I don't know. Being African American and stuff like that, we know the story of the Tuskegee experiments and stuff like that. So it's just kind of like, man, I don't know. And I felt like I was always going to get the vaccine, but I'm not gonna lie to you, man. It's just like there was some worry. So, but I appreciate something you said, like, trust is the currency of medicine. That's super important. And I appreciate you saying that, man.
Absolutely. No. And it goes two ways. So I'll tell you, this is interesting about the vaccine.
Right.
Cause again, I take care of some pretty hard up folks in my clinic.
Mm-hmm.
I've had literally 0 patients decide not to get the vaccine.
Gotcha.
0. And the reason is because, hey, I start off by, most of my patients know that I got a wife and I got 2 kids, right? Cause if I want them to trust me, I got to trust them. Right. And I usually tell them that, hey, I got my mom vaccinated and here's kind of what I went through, my thought process, and here's why I did it. I tell them that I got it, and sort of how that decision played out for me, how crappy I felt, like you do right now after the dose, right? So I don't, you know what I'm saying? That's a big part of it to me, is just being open with people and almost trust, again, because it's a two-way street, is I almost start by telling people my stuff,
right?
Because then that gets them to open up. And then when they start opening up, then you find those windows. There's like, well, the reason I don't want the vaccines, I never get sick. And I say, yeah, okay, but is that true for everyone that lives in your house? Oh no, I live with my mom's, and my mom's always getting sick. And I was like, okay, well, let's talk about that, right? Or people will talk about Tuskegee for sure, or they'll talk about other really deep issues. And that goes back to that personalization thing, right? But the question is, how do you create that space? How do you put yourself in a position to have that person's trust? For sure. At least what I've seen is, if you can get to that place, and it's not that hard, you just have to care and you have to try. Once you get there, like people are just people. Right. And at least what I've seen is people will take the vaccine, and more important, they'll listen to the guidance that you want to provide. When people know that you care, right? Like that, all those things, right?
Of course,
all those things.
Of course. No, it's funny you mentioned that. I think what ultimately, maybe go ahead and move forward with getting the vaccine is my chemistry teacher from high school. He passed away not too long ago, but I could hear him in my head saying, Mr. Lawson, I don't think you can have your own opinion about science. Just trust the science. Okay. Trust the doctors if they saying it's okay. So that's what kind of rung in my head, when it came to that, so, cause I wasn't the best chemistry student. So, so I am not one to be like, I gotta, have my own opinion or something like that.
But it's your body though, right? Of course. I was telling a group of people the other day, and I said, look, think about how abnormal, like, because people, I said, look, if you're hesitant to have the vaccine, a bunch of people put their hands up. I said, you're normal. Right. It's like, I remember when I was in med school, people said, oh yeah, I can never be a doctor because I don't like drawing blood. And I said, look, if you have a doctor who likes to draw blood and likes to see blood, get another doctor.
Gotcha. Fair
That's
enough.
not natural, right? It's not natural to want somebody to stick something in your body through a needle. And so it's okay to be hesitant. And that's kind of the starting point I started with. I said, it's okay.
Gotcha.
That's just normal. Like, gotcha. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Of course.
You shouldn't just be buying into anything that if someone walks in and knocks at your door and says, hey, I have some snake oil for you. You're not supposed to jump up and say, yeah, sign me up. Right. So, and it was funny because I think people had that reaction that you're having. And I think it creates a conversation. It creates an opening where you can actually talk person to person. Right. It's not, hey, well, I'm the doctor. You should get a vaccine. Like, nah, man, we're past that. Gotcha. We're way past that.
Fair enough. No, I appreciate you sharing that for sure. Dr. Nundy, if you would just talk about the work you do at Accolade, if you don't mind. I know you're the chief medical officer there in Startup Nation. If you want to check out what's going on at Accolade, go to accolade.com. We have that link there in the show notes for easy access. If you listen to the replay on the podcast, just kind of talk about what you do there at Accolade, if you don't mind, Dr. Nundy.
Absolutely. So first of all, for a lot of folks out there that are, running startups themselves, I still think of Accolade as a startup, right? It was a company that started, 10 years ago by an amazing group of folks. We were, lucky enough to become a public company this past summer, and, we're still at it. We're still growing. And I think we still have this sort of startup mentality. So I definitely deeply understand your audience here. And I myself, this is actually my fourth startup. The first that, failed spectacularly, the second that went public, but I wasn't, an executive at that, the third that, is still trucking along and this one. So anyway, just want to say that definitely understand your audience pretty well, I think, and where they come from.
Absolutely.
And Accolade is amazing. Accolade, speaking of some of the challenges that we talked about earlier, Accolade was sort of like any great startup, started with a really simple idea that was kind of genius. And again, it wasn't mine, so I can't take any credit for it. It was what they realized was that the secret front door to healthcare was a place that, no one knew about, which is if you take out that insurance card that you have in your wallet and you flip it on the back and there's that phone number that says member services, that was the secret front door to healthcare. That when people call that number, they're oftentimes sort of at wit's end, right? They can't get a hold of a doctor. They just found out they have breast cancer. They're trying to figure out how they can get a breast pump or something in the house. And they call that number. And what the rest of the industry was doing at the time is they were running away from that phone call. They were making it a website or an IVR screen or a robocall. And Accolade had this idea to say, well, what if when you call that number, it's picked up by a person? And what if that person wasn't just any person, it was your person? And what if that person actually had access to all of your health information, not just the medical stuff, but also stuff like how much is going to cost you? Something that me as a doctor, I shamefully don't know for most of my patients when they ask me that question, right?
Gotcha.
And that was the whole idea is really giving every employee and every family member their own personal health assistant, like almost like a travel agent from back in the day, right? Somebody who knows how to go from point A to point B in this crazy healthcare system we created,
right?
Whose job is just to advocate for you. Like, we don't make money if the doctor makes money, right? We don't make more money if your employer saves money. We just want to help you get to your destination, right? And we have, again, the right people, the right process, the right technology to help you do that. And so that's what Accolade does. It's created the space of what we call personalized navigation and advocacy. And it really sits as a layer between, employers and the big bad confusing health system, to help people get to where they need to go on their health journey.
For sure. And once again, Startup Nation, if you want to check out Accolade, we have that website, accolade.com. That link is there in the show notes for easy access if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. And before I let you go, man, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, Dr. Nundy. Thank you so much for the book. Once again, Startup Nation, the book is Care After COVID, What the Pandemic Revealed is Broken in Healthcare and How to Reinvent it. And if you want to get that book, Startup Nation, that book is available now. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you listen to the replay on the podcast. So Dr. Nundy, I'm actually just going to turn the microphone over to you, man. I know you do professorial lecturing at George Washington and stuff like that. So we're going to put that to the test just a little bit. If you could just leave us with some words of encouragement to take us out for today, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Look, I know for a lot of businesses out there, healthcare and benefits is the least sexy, sort of biggest pain in the butt, right? We know the statistics that say, for every dollar spent in this country, 18 cents is spent on healthcare, and that's coming out a lot of your pockets, right? But I think coming out of this pandemic, right, it's been obviously a national and a global tragedy,
right?
But I think, as we've talked about, what's come out of that is the healthcare system's changed more in the past year than it has in any year in its modern history. And we all have this very common understanding now, right, about how broken the healthcare system is.
Right.
And those two things together are creating this catalytic opportunity, right? That there's this window right now that we're in. And employers have a huge role to play there. And I'll say that when it's done well, helping, I know how much small business owners care about their employees. I've seen it. I've even seen how Fortune 500 companies care really, really deeply, because it's the people that they're your people. They're people that you pass around in the hallways, and you know about their kids, and now we zoom into their bedrooms and their libraries and their home offices, and but when we put the pieces together, and you sort of grow into that responsibility to say, hey, my job as a manager, as an owner, is to help my people be the best that they can be, right? Best professionally, best personally, best health-wise. All of those things in my mind are coming together to say, like, if there's ever a moment to sort of shake off the shackles of skepticism and frustration you've had with it, do that now.
Right.
Let's just reset, because there's a lot of services out there, there's a lot of tools out there, a lot of new care models there that can help you get to where your employees need to get health-wise, and in that way get your businesses, in the direction that you want your businesses to go. And so this is that moment to take a fresh look at things like navigation services, look at virtual care like we talked about, and really I can tell you that the joy that you'll experience to be able to do that for your employees and their families, there's nothing like it.
For sure. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Dr. Nundy. And that's going to wrap up this session of the Startup Life. We want to once again thank Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Shantanu Nundy, and also the author of Care After COVID. Thank you so much, good sir.
Thank you so much.
No worries. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, The Startup Life. If you want to let us know what you think about the show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on a show, send us a message. Our contact information is there in the show notes, or feel free to reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Go ahead and follow us while you're at it. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast One, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and be sure to hit us with that 5-star rating. We would really appreciate that. Be sure to check out the show's website and its startup blog, where either I or some of the world's best business minds share content that will give you the edge you need in your journey, whether that's the path of entrepreneurship or climbing the corporate ladder. Subscribe to our Patreon to listen to ad-free episodes, exclusive content, and digital products that we are beginning to offer. And if you want to be part of the conversation, join the Startup Life podcast on Clubhouse to have the ability to talk directly to some of our guests. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, the Startup Life.